Shireen and I made a clue game simulation for our project. It's based off of the board game Clue, where you solve a murder mystery, but we made some alterations so that it made sense in a command line format. Here's an overview of our game. So, there's been a murder mystery in a mansion, and you have to determine who committed the crime out of six possible suspects, what weapon they used out of six possible weapons, and which room of the mansion they did it in. So in our game, the user plays with two computer simulated players, and we've simulated cards in a card deck where each card has a suspect, weapon, or room, and three of these cards are randomly chosen to be in a case file, which contains the information of the murder, and none of the players know what's in the case file. The rest of the cards, which are not in the case file, are distributed to the players. So, for example, the case file could contain Professor Plum, a dagger, and living room, meaning that those three things were involved in the crime. And to win, a player has to be the first one to figure out those three cards. And they can do that by interrogating other players about which cards they have in their hand. The person playing this game should reference notes.txt, which automatically updates as they play, so they can see their progress and they can choose what to interrogate about. This game will mostly make more sense when it's played.
Now that you know how to play, I'm going to play just to show you what exactly our program does. So these are my notes, and then these are the computer's notes. So in reality, when the user is playing, you aren't supposed to look at each of these notes, otherwise you'll be cheating. So these are my notes, or cards that I have in my hand, and they're also shown here. And so for the first thing I'll be doing is interrogating computer one about cards that I can put in. So these are the cards that I don't have, and in each one of these categories, one of them from each of them, so one place, one weapon, one person, would be in the case file, and that's what I have to figure out. So the suspect can be Miss Scarlet, Miss White, or Mr. Green. The weapon can be one of these, places can be one of these. So what I have to do is I have to interrogate computer one about one of these places, and if they have it, it will disappear from the notes. So let's try putting Miss White, and the weapon as a wrench, and the room as the office. Okay, and now it's just saying I'm interrogating computer one about all the cards I put in, and then are you sure you want to move on? So I say yes, and says comp one does not have any of those cards. So if comp one doesn't have any of the cards that I entered in, then it will move on to comp two. And now comp two will be asked about the cards. And then I have been shown Mrs. White. So as you can see, Mrs. White has been removed from the suspects list because it is in one of the player's cards. So it can't be in the case file. All right, so I return, and now it's the computer's turn. So the computer's here getting computer two about Colonel Mustard, wrench, kitchen, and the comp two has shown comp one a card. So that's their turn, and then it's comp two's turn. So comp two is interrogating me about Miss White, rope, and garage. And it looks like I have two of the cards that that they have interrogated me about. So I can choose either to show the rope or the garage. So I either enter 0 or 1. So I can show them the garage, and then I've shown that card to comp two. Now, would you like to make a final accusation? Not yet, because I still have a bunch of other cards that I don't know which one is the right one. So no, so now I keep interrogating. So let's do Mr. Green, weapon, wrench, room, office. So I want to continue. Yes. Oh, okay. So that was really quick. So it looks like comp one doesn't have any of those cards, and comp two will be asked about those cards. So it looks like comp 2 didn't have any of those cards at all. So if comp 1 and comp 2 doesn't have any of the cards that I accused them or interrogated them about, then the remaining cards will stay while everything else goes, if that makes sense. So since I put Mr. Green, the wrench, in the office, and none of the players had those cards would stay. And we can go on. That really never happens, but I would like to make a final accusation, and I accuse Mr. Green. The weapon would be wrench, and the room where it happened would be the office. So it looks like I won. So Mr. Green has been arrested, and it looks like I've guessed everything in the case file. And if you wanted, after the game is over, you could see how the computers are doing so far. So this is the computer two's notes. So you can see that they weren't very close. And then computer one wasn't very close either. And you can always play again. And usually this doesn't happen that fast, but if the computer two notes, if the computer two keeps interrogating and has one person in each of the categories, then they will automatically win. So if either comp 2 or comp 1 has one person, weapon, or place left, then they will win automatically.
Now I'm going to be talking about how we set up the cards. So first we created 3 array lists that had the person's weapons and place cards. So you can see here we added each of those categories. And then we made the user notes. So notes are the ones like here the notes. So these are what the notes are, and that's what we were setting up right here. So you can see that we created a for loop and just added everything in there, and then we did the same thing for the computer 1 and computer 2 notes. Then we shuffled the 3 pile of cards, which I will show the shuffle method later on. And we put the first item or the first index of each array list into the case file. And the case file, remember, is the file with all the answers. So the person who was the murderer, the weapon that was the person used, and the place where it all happened. And after that, we removed those 3 cards just because we don't want the users, like comp 1, comp 2, and the user, to have those cards. Otherwise, it would just mess up the whole game. And then we decided to, we distributed the remaining cards to the players. And here you can see we made a card deck and put all the remaining cards, like excluding these 3 cards, into that one array list. And then we shuffled it, which again, I'll show you that later. And then what we did here was we dealt the cards to each player. So here you can see we added the first index of card one, a card deck, and then removed it. So then comp 1 cards would have the first index, but it would be a different card, if that makes sense. And we did the same thing for cards. And we kept doing it till we made it X is less than 6 because there are 6 cards per person. All right, and then we just printed out the cards here. Okay, so talking about shuffle cards, so that was a method used to just shuffle the cards. I think I'm having trouble finding it. There we go. So we have a for loop here, and we use the like a random function and set it up like that. And then if you had seen earlier when we were making the case file, we had 3 cards, and 3 cards is a class here, which I'll be showing right now. So basically, this class again here is for storing information about the 3 cards, which is the case file, so the person, weapon, and room, and then comparing or printing out that information. So here's just getters and setters, default variables, all the necessary things for a class. And then what we have here is just other methods that are used to compare places, compare weapons, compare persons, which is needed during the accusation. And then, also in the interrogation. And also we have none of those cards, so if someone was interrogating another person about their cards and they didn't have any of the cards, it would return false or true, and we would get we would use that information with something. And then we're just going to print out the information of the 3 cards. So that is how we set up each card.
I'll just show you how the notes files work. So each player has their own notes, even though when the user is playing, you're not actually supposed to look at these 2 notes during the game. But we've included them just so you can see that as the game is progressing, it actually updates and acts as if they're real players. So in your own notes, these cards show the cards you have and these show the cards you don't have. Or yeah, these are the cards you don't have. And as you play, things will go away and disappear from here as you learn about more cards that other players have. And as you're shown more cards. So another thing we have is that if you are interrogating, let's say comp 1 about 3 cards, let's say I interrogated about colonel mustard, wrench, and living room, and they didn't have any of those cards, so then it'll ask comp 2, and then comp 2 also didn't have any of those cards. Then you know that since you also don't have those cards, they're in here. So then you know that those 3 cards must be in the case file. And the program will automatically get rid of everything except for those 3 cards. And yeah, so the program basically updates everything in the notes for you. If this was the board game version, you would actually have to use paper and pencil and cross things out, but this gets rid of everything for you. So I'll show the 3 methods for the players taking turns. We have a user's turn method, and a comp 1's turn method, and a comp 2's turn method. So in the user's turn, it asks the user to enter 3 things to interrogate about, and it actually takes the input and then does a string manipulate, which is a method we wrote. Let me try to find it. What it does is it gets rid of any extra spaces at the beginning or ending of the string that might have accidentally been entered, and it also capitalizes words. So I could enter like space, prof. You just have to make sure the spelling is right, but I could enter something like this, and it will automatically correct it to this. So that's where we use string manipulations. And back to the user's turn. So it will first compare those 3 cards you entered to comp 1's cards. And then it'll add the cards that comp 1 has to the has cards array list. And then it will, at the end, it will randomly choose a card from those to show the user. But if comp 1 didn't have any of the cards in the interrogation, then it'll ask comp 2. And then those would be added to the has cards array list. Then at the very end, it chooses a random card from the has cards list to show the user. But if none of those players had anything, so if comp 2 also didn't have those cards, then you may have just figured out something big. So what we do is we search through the notes here. We would search through this for the card you asked about. Like, let's say I asked about Miss Scarlet, it would search through. And if Miss Scarlet is in here, then it would definitely make sense that, oh, sorry, no, if I asked about Mr. Green and Mr. Green is not in here, then it would make sense that no other player has that card because I have that card. So you didn't figure out anything. But if um if I asked about colonel mustard and they didn't have no one else had colonel mustard and I don't have it, then I know that he must be in the case file. So the notes would automatically get rid of these two things. And same for the other two categories. So we have some for loops and if statements to do that. And the major difference between user's turn and the computer's turn methods are that when they're choosing which cards to be part of the interrogation, it would randomize 3 cards from their notes list to be part of that interrogation, and there's a 30% chance for each category that comp 1 will ask about, or like the computer will ask about a card that they already have, and there's 70% chance they'll ask about a card they don't have, and that can make the game a little more challenging for the player and a little more it's not as easy to beat the computer.
Now moving on to the last part of the program, which is the accusation. So each turn there is a question that says, would you like to make a final accusation? And the user puts yes or no. And the turns are in a while loop. So when the user inputs y, it breaks out of this while loop and it goes to this if statement. So it says if is ready, which is the input, is an uppercase y or a lowercase y. We create a new 3 cards class, which is called accusation. And I'll explain a little bit more about that later. And what the user does is enters a person, weapon, and place. And the input is put through the string manipulate method, which gets rid of all the extra spaces, and then makes all the uppercase proper, lowercase proper, etc. And then it sets the accusation of the person card and the weapon card and the place card. So each person would be put in the person's card, and then the weapon in the weapon, and so on. Now we have this statement. It says if accusation dot equals case file. So now is the part where we go to the 3 cards class, and here we can go down to the equals method, which is here. So here we have our equals method, which was called, and it just compares the case file card with the accusations card. And if it returns true, then it means that they are equal. If false, then of course it's not equal. So if we go back to main Java, right. So if it equals it and it's true, then it says congrats, you've won, and then it gets the person, whoever the person was, has been arrested. So whoever the murderer was has been arrested. Otherwise, sorry, you lose. The correct cards that were involved were so, so, and so. So that's what this if statement does. Else, now this is when one of the computers have won. So what happens then is the computers would have, give a second, would have 1 card or 1 person in each of these categories. And so either comp 1 or comp 2. And when they do, what happens here is it says here, comp 1 has made a final accusation, comp 1 has guessed that so, so, and so were involved in the crime. So we put the case file there because either way, the computer would be accurate giving their own answers. So that's why we just put the real answers there. So when comp 1 wins or guesses correctly, you lose, obviously. And the same goes for the computer 2. And like just going more in depth, you can see that when the size of each of the weapons, person, or place list is 1, then that means they have an accusation to make. And when that happens, we just say, do you want to play again? Yes or no. And just to be more clear, everything here is also in a do while loop. So the game would keep going until you say you wouldn't want to play again. So that is how we made our clue game simulation. Thanks for playing.